No, all right, that's cool. Pardon me because I am still, I don't know if you could hear it. I got something crazy going on between they think it's my sinuses because my ears feel like I'm losing hearing. That was how I felt this week. And I've just been a little congested. So if you hear something weird and crazy coming out of me, just deal with it because I gotta just deal with it. All right. And so I don't mean if that came off rude, but just gotta deal with it. All right. So um so last week we talked about we were in Second Samuel, the first chapter, and we talked about when David had learned about Saul's death. And we kind of had to go back a little bit, which was really good because when the Amalekite came to David I don't know if he thought that he was going to be, bragging about the fact that he killed Saul, um, bragging about the fact that he had killed Saul, and that wasn't okay with David, even though Saul made David his enemy, that type of thing wasn't okay. And you'll have people like that sometimes, people that might be around you might have a completely different agenda than what you have, but people might use certain things that they think you would be interested in to try to reel you in for personal gain. So we have to think about it in a sense of like, let's say, for example, um, I'm just trying to think like, let's say, for example, anything, you could be somebody who drinks, right? And so somebody else who drinks, they might use certain type of things to engage you in conversation, but people don't know why you're doing what you do. The reason why I do something might be different than why you do something, or the way we do things might be different. In this case, David was fighting with Saul, not because of himself, but because of Saul, right? And so while Saul might have looked at David as an enemy, he still had David didn't think of Saul that way. David had a lot of love and respect for the position that Saul was in. Okay. And so sometimes people just might not know why you do the things that we do. There's a saying a lot of times people be like you could be a part of something and then be like, we're not the same. Okay, like I'm doing this and you're doing this, but trust me, we are not the same. And so sometimes you can have somebody who's around you doing the same thing, want to talk to you, want to try to engage you, but you just might not be the same. And that even applies to our walk. Okay, my reason for being here, my reason for doing this might be way different than yours. You might, I don't know, I don't know what it might be for you, but it really is might be something different for me. um I've been preparing a message, which is not something that I usually do, but it has made me really think about, my ministry and how my ministry is. And my motivation might be different than somebody else's motivation. So some things that I do not um take as a joke or play a game with, there's a reason for that. Is because I've had certain experiences where this is not a game for me. So I don't play church, okay? I don't just do things for the sake of doing it. I don't sit here, I don't fake no kind of Holy Ghost or Holy Spirit because it's not a game for me. All right. I've been to places where people talk in tongues like if they just speak in Spanish, and it's not funny to me. It's not funny to me. And so this is what people tend to do. For me, this is my life. When I think back at some of the things that God has really, really saved me from, I don't play about God. And even in situations that I don't necessarily like to be in, when God says go, I gotta go because I know what it's like to tell God no. All right. And so my reason might be different from somebody else's reason. And it's okay. It's okay if somebody's not where you are, but sometimes read the room, get to know people, learn somebody's story, because we do that too. We might judge people sometimes and be like, why so serious? Why they don't hang out with us? Why they don't do some of the things that we do? Why they don't talk to us wherever we might be? Well, there's a reason. You know, you don't know what that person might be dealing with or what they're going through. David was in this fight not because he wanted to be, but because number one, this is where God had him. And this is what Saul had drew him into. So the Amalekite coming wasn't going to get any kind of kudos from David about, the situation. So that was something else that I thought about. And like I said, we can read these scriptures, I can't tell you how many times, and just get something different. Um, Last couple of weeks, you guys have really been challenging and just pulling and making us think, but it made us go back to the history between the people of Israel and the Amalekites, and how Saul wound up being in a situation that he was in when he wound up losing his life, and whether the Amalekite did it or not, or whether Saul did it or not, but the Amalekite getting or trying to get the glory for it, right? But it was so ironic that God told him to kill all of them, and he thought that he was doing something by being disobedient. And so even with that, it's telling us about, what could happen or what it means when we're being disobedient when the Lord is telling us to do something. All right. And so if anybody finds themselves in a situation now where, if anybody finds themselves being in a situation now where they are just, finding themselves to be disobedient, you might want to consider that, and consider that what that means for your long game. It might seem like, okay, I'm getting away with it, or God is a God of mercy, a God, how do I say, God knows my heart, like the things that we say that we think that we could play around, but that might be the very thing that catches up with us a little later. And so, part of me, you want to be mindful of those things. All right. So before we get into 2 Samuel chapter 2, pardon me, does anybody have anything that they wanted to add to that, or any questions? Come on, Valencia. I could always tell. I could tell. Go ahead.
We have been studying a book called Thin Line of Trust,
Mhm.
and it basically a lot of things boil down to our words and how we communicate with people. And it really drove home the fact of how important words are. And, God tells us not to make oaths and promises, because if we, because we're supposed to honor our word, and, a person is known, um, by their reputation. And if you can't even honor your word, what type of person are you? And so, um, even when we're dealing with people like a Saul, we still have to be super careful about what it is that we say. Even though their behavior is not appropriate, it doesn't mean that our behavior has to become inappropriate as well.
Mhm. Okay, I'm gonna stop this sharing for 1 second because you just brought me back to something. So, I was actually called in, and that was a good point. So I was called in for an interview for a chaplain, a part-time chaplain position with the prison. Now, I always wanted to be a prison chaplain ever since coming into ministry. I love working for the prison system. Doing God's work in the prison system to me is awesome. And so someone sent me a listing and they called me back right away. And it's a familiar place for me because I worked in the prison system for 12 years. And so I go for the interview on Monday, and interestingly enough, I keep thinking about, well, what do I say when they ask why I separated from state service the first time? And, I could give a great interview answer. I could say I went ahead and I started my own businesses. I could say that I went back to school and that's what, gave me the opportunity to be here today. I could say all of that, but the reality of it is I went through something, and so in my head, I'm like, oh, I just want to be honest. I'm at a point in my life where I could be honest. I don't need the job. So I could just say what I want to say, right? But the part of me that's unsettled. That's the part of me that's unsettled. But no matter what, you have to be mindful, because whether you want a job or not, whether you need a job or not, it speaks to my character as a person. You know, you cannot go around bad mouthing. And not only that, but it made me do some self-reflection. Why do I still feel the way that I feel? Right. So when we want to badmouth people or we want to say something negative, we need to think about, well, what is it that's inside of us that's still unsettled? Because to be honest with you, if I really look at it from a kingdom perspective, okay, those people did nothing to me but set me up to do what it was that God called me to do. My life has been on the right track since, because since then I have been free to do the Lord's work, and He has met me every single step of the way, right? And in reality, that's what it is. And there was nothing that has happened to David. Okay, even though we saw David running, we could just imagine the stress that he was under. You know, later on, we'll see how much he missed, not having his wife. Saul did some things to him, but if we really look at it, everything that David went through was because this is what God had in place for him to get to where he was going to go. And so we want to be mindful about bad mouthing people. We want to be mindful about bad mouthing our situations and our circumstances, because we could be bad mouthing the Lord's process for us, right? This, no matter how unpleasing, displeasing, how undesirable it might be a place where the Lord has us. And so, what are we saying to the Lord when we reject His process? I'm serious. What are we saying? Like, God, I could do it better. I understand you have me here, but you're doing it wrong. I mean, what are we really saying when we say that? Even if it's people that have been used, because you know what I say, somebody had to be the Judas, right? So we're always going to have that kind of opposition. And no, we don't like them. Yes, they might think that they were being intentional, but if you believe that your life is in God's hands, then you got to count it all joy. You got to know that they don't have the power to do anything to you that God didn't ordain. You have to know that. I had been going through something for like the last 2 weeks, and prior to this weekend, and it was a lot for me. It was a lot, and it was just stirring up a lot inside of me. And I finally got to a point where I said, you know what? I don't really know what's going on, but I know God is doing something. And when I tell you that as soon as I said it, I had peace, and that thing lifted off of me. And I was so thankful. I really was. And the only thing that I did was just surrender it. It didn't change the reality of what had happened. It didn't mean that in that moment I felt different, but I promise you, I just surrendered to the fact that God is doing something and I don't understand it. So as unpleasant as it might be, it is what it is, and I'm going to trust God because He always works it out. And once I got to that, I was able to sleep peacefully and wake up free of what it was that I was feeling. Not only that, but then God took the very same situation and turned it around. Turned it around where I thought I messed myself up in it. He completely turned it around. Really put me back on solid ground. Like, it was amazing. And I wanted to share that because oftentimes you tell people, just surrender, just let go, give it to God. And it sounds good, but people don't know how to do that. And it's hard. I'm telling you, it's hard to tell people how to do it, especially considering some things that people might be going through and they still might be in it. And you don't really have any guarantees that it's going to change. Somebody could be sick, and you're like, well, surrender it to God. Like, surrender it how? Am I going to cut this out of me and just give it to the Lord and say, here, I'm giving it to? It doesn't work like that. But truly developing that mindset that I just don't understand, but I trust God. So if I have to go through this, then I just got to trust God that whatever it is, whatever it is going to be good in the end. Whatever it is, it might not look like it. I might not be able to see my way out of this at all or out of here, but somehow, some way, it's going to be good. It makes no sense, but it's going to be good. And that is surrendering, knowing it. I mean, truly knowing it. And so, thank you for that, Valencia. All right. And so getting back to um Second Samuel chapter 2. All right. So we already see what happened in chapter 1, how David felt, and what they wound up doing. And so after this, David asked the Lord, should I move back to one of the towns of Judah? Yes, the Lord replied. Then David asked, what town should I go to? To Hebron, the Lord answered. David's two wives were Ahinoam and Jezreel and Abigail. Excuse me, Ahinoam from Jezreel and Abigail, the widow of Nabal from Carmel. So David and his wives and his men and their family all moved to Judah, and they settled in the villages near Hebron. Then the men of Judah came to David and anointed him king over the people of Judah. When David heard that the men of Jabesh Gilead had buried Saul, he sent them a message. May the Lord bless you for being so loyal to your master Saul and giving him a decent burial. May the Lord be loyal to you in return and reward you with his unfailing love. And I too will reward you for what you have done. Now that Saul is dead, I ask you to be strong and loyal subjects like the people of Judah who have anointed me as their new king. But Abner, son of Ner, the commander of Saul's army, had already gone to Mahanaim with Saul's son Ishbosheth. There he proclaimed Ishbosheth king over Gilead, Jezreel, Ephraim, Benjamin, and the land of the Ashurites and the rest of Israel. Ishbosheth, Saul's son, was 40 years old when he became king, and he ruled from Mahanaim for 2 years. Please pardon me in the pronunciation between that and my braces is hard, but we're going to get through this, okay? All right, thank you. Have grace. Meanwhile, the people of Judah remained loyal to David. David made Hebron his capital, and he ruled as king over Judah for 7.5 years. One day, Abner led Ishbosheth's troops from Mahanaim to Gibeon about the same time. Joab, son of Jeriah, led David's troops out and met them in the pool of Gibeon. The two groups sat down there, facing each other from opposite sides of the pool. Then Abner suggested to Joab, let's have a few of our warriors fight hand to hand here in front of us. All right, Joab agreed. So 12 men were chosen to fight from each side, 12 men from Benjamin, representing Ishbosheth, son of Saul, and 12 representing David. Each one grabbed his opponent by the hair and thrust his sword into the other side so that all of them died. So this place of Gibeon has been known ever since as the field of swords. A fierce battle followed that day, and Abner and the men of Israel were defeated by the forces of David. Joab, Abishai, and Asahel, the three sons of Zeruiah, were among David's forces that day. Asahel could run like a gazelle, and he began chasing Abner. He pursued him relentlessly, not stopping for anything. When Abner looked back and saw him coming, he called out, "Is that you, Asahel?" "Yes, it is," he replied. "Go fight somewhere else," Abner warned. "Take on one of the younger men and strip him of his weapons." But Asahel kept right on chasing Abner. Again, Abner shouted to him, "Get away from here. I don't want to kill you. How could I ever face your brother Joab again?" But Asahel refused to turn back. So Abner thrust the butt end of his spear through Asahel's stomach, and the spear came out through his back. He stumbled to the ground and died there. And everyone who came by that spot stopped and stood still when they saw Asahel laying there. When Joab and Abishai found out what had happened, they set out after Abner. The sun was just going down as they arrived at the hill of Ammah near Giah, along the road to the wilderness of Gibeon. Abner's troops from the tribe of Benjamin regrouped there at the top of the hill to take a stand. Abner shouted down at Joab, "Must we always be killing each other? Don't you realize that bitterness is the only result? When you call off your men from chasing it, when will you call off your men from chasing their Israelite brothers?" Then Joab said, "God only knows what would have happened if you hadn't spoken, for what we would have chased you all night if necessary." So Joab blew the ram's horn, and his men stopped chasing the troops of Israel. At all that night, Abner and his men retreated through the Jordan Valley. They crossed the Jordan River, traveling all through the morning, and didn't stop until they arrived at Mahanaim. Meanwhile, Joab and his men also returned home. When Joab counted his casualties, he discovered that only 19 men were missing in addition to Asahel, but 365 of Abner's men had been killed, all from the tribe of Benjamin. Joab and his men took Asahel's body to Bethlehem and buried him there in his father's tomb. Then they traveled all night and reached Hebron at daybreak. So I thank God for his word. I thank God I was able to get through it because that was not easy. But what, if anything, did any of you get out of this passage?
I think for me, it's the, when will you stop killing your brothers, your Israelite brothers?
Mhm.
And, seeing how the tribes, like it's very, takes me to today, and how, we look at ourselves as different, even though like, oh, I'm from America, or I'm foundational Black, I'm Nigerian, I'm this, I'm that. And it is differences, you know what I'm saying? Different tribes are different. And I do believe that, but it still comes down to family, in a sense, and how we are, essentially cousins. Like it's one of those things where it makes me think of that when I think of, Jamaican and Nigerian and even I think Mexican. Like when I saw a chart a while ago, and it was just saying the different tribes, and it kind of put them with certain type of ethnicities and things like that. But it just kind of made me think of that, as far as just us being, even though we live here, they live there, that's just like a regular family. You have some family from North Carolina, South Carolina, like, yeah, we different, and there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that. But at the end of the day, the killing only help, it really only hurts us. You know what I'm saying? There's really no benefit to it. And how like at the end when he was saying he counts his casualties as far as like what was the point? Like maybe I missed what was the point, but that's kind of what I think about today when I think about the different killing and the you not one of us and you not this and you not that. At the end of the day, we're fighting each other so much that we forget what the major point is or the goal should be. And we don't really see how, and I'm getting deep because I can go down this rabbit hole, but we really don't see how it's a bigger foot on all of our necks that needs to be fought against. So I'll stop there before I go down my rabbit hole of discussion.
No, you really didn't have to stop, and I love it because this is, I mean, it is something that happened today. We might read it, pardon me, and not see it, think about it like that, but that's exactly what it is. When we think and we hear, the tribe of Benjamin, the tribe of Judah, and we think about, God's promise to Abraham, of what, and his promise was for all of his ancestors, right? For his whole family, right? And so when we hear that they're fighting against each other, killing one another, and then considering it a victory, it's like this is so far off of God's plan. So when you put it in perspective like that and you say, okay, this is exactly what we're doing to each other, we can say that it could be, nationality against nationality, in which it is, right? Country against country, in which it is. Sometimes I hear, and he's my friend, but he makes a distinction between African Americans and people that were born on the continent of Africa. He's from Cameroon. And I remember one day saying something, and he said, "No, you African Americans are different. Y'all mixed with Jefferson." Okay. And, I didn't take any offense to it, but this is how a lot of people think. We are very different. We're not the same. Yes, our culture might be different, our upbringing might be different, but at the end of the day, yes, we are still the same. And I'm not even going to sit here and just separate us by, those who are mixed with Jefferson and those who are not, but technically, when we think about the fact that we're all God's children, I am a parent of multiple children. It does not feel good to me when my children are against one another. It does not. It hurts. It really does. It affects everything. Okay. We have other generations. It affects everything. I would want nothing more than my children just to be together. And especially because I feel like when I'm not here, I need y'all to be with one another, because you are all that you have. That's it. You came from me. And so it's like it's very painful. So can you imagine for a second what this must look like to God? And God uses Israel a lot, a lot. And I'm gonna stop the screen just for a second, because I never really thought about it. So Amber, I just really have to thank you. When I think about the fact that Israel is like God's chosen people, right? And we always think, just like with the word blessed, we like to say, "Oh, I'm blessed, I'm highly favored." And it's like, well, what does that mean? And we've been through this already, right? Like people think that it should mean that things are great for you, but it's not. It seems like those are the people that are most challenged, right? And if you think that, this is God's chosen nation, like the people of Israel, these are God's chosen people, you expect that everything should be pleasant, right? But it's amazing because they're God's chosen people, because through their dysfunction, through their imperfection, their inability to get things right, we have been able to truly learn so much about God and us and our relationship with Him through what we see with the people of Israel. They are damaged individuals, just like us, but yet God still loves them. God still favors them. Anytime they cry out to Him, here He goes with loving arms. And that's the way He is with us. The people of Israel, those 12 tribes, okay, they just reflect the whole world in every way. And so, yes, Amber, go down your rabbit hole, because we don't talk about it. And we don't talk about it in relationship to God. We really don't. If I have a problem with it and you have a problem with it, just imagine how God has a problem with it on the large scale. Because I might see the beef in my family, and you might see the beef in your neighborhood, and somebody who's a news buff might see it, country to country and nation to nation. But this is the world, and this is the way God sees us. So when we look at it just in scripture, just out of this one chapter, 2 Samuel chapter 2, And we have a problem with it. We're like, really? Like, what are you getting out of it? Just imagine if we look at it from a worldwide perspective, from a godly perspective. And then what does it say about us? Because we can't be responsible for the whole world, right? Like we could pray for peace, and I believe that prayer works. I do, so there's nothing wrong with us praying for peace. But let's look at our own personal relationship. What do you have against your siblings, your cousins, your neighbors, other family members? And this is, I'm talking to me because I'm quick to get upset. I will not lie to you. I am not that nice. Okay. God is still working on me. All right. I'm better. I'm better. Oh God, I'm so better. I am better. God knows I am better. Okay. I am better, but I still have a lot of growing to do. We all do. And so even when I hear stuff like this, it makes me think, is God pleased? Does it even sound right to hear Judah against Benjamin? Huh? I mean, does that sound right? So does it sound right to hear you against him or him against you? Like, does it sound in our own, just in our own little world? Does it sound right? God put you there together. He created you all. Does it sound right? It sounds just as wrong as to do in the text. We might not be able to do anything about world peace, right? But we can do something about our peace. The peace that God has entrusted to us as individuals, the relationships that God has entrusted to us, our brothers of our lives, our brothers, our friendships, our neighbors, our co-workers, the people that we see. How are we treated? How are we treating them? They might be from Benjamin. I might be from Judah. Right? I might be mixed with Jefferson, but I've done my ancestry. All right. I know where I come from, and there's no denying that. So it don't matter what I'm mixed with. I still know where I come from. So what's the difference? Will God be pleased? Come from the same place, same person, ultimately. So that was a good point, Amber. Thank you. And feel free if you want to add anything and go deeper, that's fine. Anybody else have anything to say or they want to add to that?
Of course.
Of course, Valencia. Come on, keep it coming.
Well, it made me go back to the very beginning where you were talking about basically that we have doorkeepers. People are the doorkeepers. And so we usually talk about it as people opening up doors, but sometimes the people are there to close the door so that God can lead us in the direction that He would have us to go. But we start thinking of that person as our enemy. And so then we get caught up in our own personal stuff when it's spiritual, not personal. And most things are spiritual and they're not personal because our life is so much more than this short period of time that we're here on this earth. And so if we are fighting against those people that we're now calling our enemies, then we're fighting our brothers and our sisters in Christ. And so we're losing the point of why we're here in the first place. And it doesn't look good as God's ambassador at all. That's just not a good look. And we're messing up His reputation. And our job is to uphold God's reputation, right? Our job is to represent Him, to be an ambassador. But and then we see, so far in this Bible, we're seeing David going through a whole bunch of stuff with Saul, and we've never heard him cuss Saul out. But we might think that he rightly deserved to cuss Saul out, but there was a bigger picture. And so David learned how to honor, he learned how to follow leadership, he learned how to serve, and those things are necessary to become a great leader and a king. And so he went through those things because they were necessary. Saul didn't necessarily have to be made an enemy in his mind, but we always need to remember, like, there's a lot of I'm making an assumption that there's people on this call that are really going through it with some family members. And they might feel that they've been mistreated or that they've been hurt, but what did God have to say about the situation? Have you stopped to say, okay, God, why are we going down this direction? Where is it? How am I supposed to use this thing that's making me feel some kind of way? Because the anger, the hurt, the wanting to cuss, the wanting to hurt someone, beat someone, whatever, isn't godlike. And so where is it that he's trying to lead me? That's where we stop. We don't get to that point. And so the point isn't for us to get our get back. The point isn't for us to get, mama left me, half and I'm supposed to have half. That's not the point of us being here. God still took care of you before and he'll take care of you after, whether you get that half or you don't get that half. But the real question is, why are we here? What is the point? What door did you close? Okay, so God, this door's closed. Why is it closed? What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to be going in a different direction? And so I'm almost done. And so at the very beginning, I think it was in verse 1 and verse 2, he was like, okay, Lord, so where am I supposed to go? What city am I supposed to be in? He recognized that there was purpose in his life and he stayed focused. All of these other things and our fighting and bickering with people, with flesh and blood, because it's not about flesh and blood, but it's about the principalities. So he didn't lose his focus on why he was actually here. And so God is not a respecter of person. He's not have something for David that he doesn't have for us, but we've got to stay focused and not lose our perspective. Okay, I'm done.
No, it's okay. If you have something to say, that's completely fine. And it's a really good point. One of the things that you made me think about, which is really confirming to some of the things that I've been thinking about lately, was uh Joseph. And one of the things about Joseph, well, let me go back before I go into Joseph. When you were saying, what is it that I can't remember how you said it, Valencia, but like, what is God trying to show us, right? Or what do we need to change? Was that what you were saying, right? At one point. And it really, like I was sharing with you guys last week, I was really going through something last week. And part of it, I had to say to myself, instead of me blaming everybody else and looking at the situations, what is it about me? Because I'm responding the way that I respond so easily because this is familiar to me. And it's familiar because I've been in this situation so many times. And then I respond the way I always have responded. So if I'm finding myself in the same thing, what are you trying to tell me, God? What do I have to do differently? Because obviously I need to change. Because if we keep finding ourselves going through the same test, that means we felt it before. So even if we think that we're avoiding somebody or we're trying to keep the peace or we're just trying to make things better by not saying or saying, we need to see, what is it, God? What are you trying to tell me? What is it that you're trying to show me? What do I need to do? And, the thing about God's reputation, I used to struggle with that a little bit because, yes, we'll be quick, to respond a certain way. And because you call yourself a Christian, because you walk around with your Bible, because you have your cross somewhere, the first thing people are going to attack is your religion. That's why I don't go to church anyway, because this is how those Christians act. This is da 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 da. And I remember going through things and wanting to not be a poor reflection of God, and let me go a little deeper with that, not even want people to know what I was going through because I didn't want God to look bad. And so God had to tell me, like, I don't need you to do that. Like, I don't need you to do that. God is God all by himself. I'm not bigger than God. Like, I can't shield God, right? I cannot protect God. I got to let God be God and let him go through whatever it is. What we got to go through, whatever it is we got to go through, because we don't know what he's trying to show us. So now it gets back to my point of Joseph. I think back to when Joseph was going through what he was going through with his brothers, And by this time, they done sold him off. And by this time, he done went through what he went through with Potiphar's wife. And by this time, he done been to prison, and he's been forgotten. But now he's where he's at, right? He's second in command, so now it almost appears that everything that he saw in his dreams about his life will come to pass. But his brothers came. And when he saw them, those feelings began to come up, right? They just, and we talk about the 12 tribes, right? So those feelings are just coming up inside of him. And I think back to when he went and he had put the stuff inside of Benjamin's bag, as though they were taking it. Number one, he set them up, it didn't happen, And so then when the other brother came and like pleaded, like, listen, listen, please, we've been through enough, like we did this to our older brother. We have a father who's going through it. If we don't bring back this boy, it's gonna be a problem. Like, we're sorry. We have been through a lot, and he didn't know who he was talking to. And so just seeing how Joseph had to, I know he wanted to get back, but in that moment, he had to break down and let go of and forgive in that moment what had been done to him. This was not the first time he came across his brothers, but he didn't do that. He didn't even show them who he was. And so for now, this time to happen, and he had to break down and talk to them, do something different, show them, because his life had been seemingly fine up to that point. Like he let it go, he give God the glory, he do this, even though at one point he's saying, well, I'm the reason. So it showed that he was losing focus. But it wasn't until he did something different and he was just honest about the situation, that it wasn't just for his brother's benefit, but it was for his benefit. Because now, yes, God had ordained him to be who he was, right? But it wasn't until he went through this where he had to be hurt. And now he had to learn forgiveness. And he had to show grace and all those attributes that we love about the Lord before he could truly step in to the role and the position that God had called him for. And so for us, a lot of these things that we're fighting against, which is within ourselves, right? A lot of these things that we might not want to change, or ways about us that, we haven't grown into, we might find ourselves in these circumstances, but it's not about the other person. It's not really just about giving God the glory, or, just being a person to show, I'm going to give honor to God who's the head of my life, my pastor, my first lady. No, it's not about that, but it's about that character building. Like, truly, who are you? Are you the person that God called you to be? And can he now trust you to fully move into the position and all that he has purpose for you to do? Because that's what we're seeing in David. Every time David goes through something, we're seeing David has not even fully been king yet. But we are seeing so many great things about him through his testing and the way he's handling it, and how he's grown. We're gonna learn he's not perfect, but there was definitely something about him that made him a man after God's own heart. And we're learning and we're seeing what that is. Any questions, any concerns? Anybody disagree? Have anything else?
No, I just wanted to just insert too. It goes back to the beginning, when we was fresh in the word, and God told them when he separated the tribes, and he, remember, they had to make, and please help me out, they had to make a symbol, some type of symbolism. What was it called? Was it the altar? Or like it was what they had the
tabernacle?
The tabernacle.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like he was like, even though I'm separating you and I'm putting you in these different areas, you have got keep this symbol, keep this one thing. Because he knew that, when you put one tribe over here, one tribe over there, and you know that separation, things are going to be different, right? So it is hard for me, if I bring it into this perspective, to even Black Americans. Like I said, I love my people. I love my culture. It is different than you know, someone from Nigeria or Jamaican, but that's what I love about it all. So it's a sense of, yes, if I am the tribe of Judah, we different than tribe of Benjamin. And that's okay. But at the end of the day, and God knew that. But it had to be that one thing to say, but you still my brother. You know, and it made me think back to the beginning. That's why he said that. Because it's like, I know you guys are gonna forget. I know when you get in this world full of the ites, all of the different ites, you're gonna be separated. They're gonna put you against each other. It's no way around that, you know. So I just it's interesting how we kind of like, this is why, even in 2023, why he said to keep that one thing. I don't care what part of the globe you're from, that one thing you guys need to keep between you so you can recognize who you are. So yeah, I was just sitting here thinking about that, and I was like, dang, that one thing. So, but we all are spiritual people though. That's the thing too. If you look at us, we are very spiritual people. You know, regardless of where you are, but it's just like that one thing that got lost somewhere to keep us in that divide, you know.
Absolutely. You know, and I think about the true evidence of the spirit being love, you know, and that's just the thing that it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm around a lot of autistic children lately, and some verbal, some nonverbal, um, on many different ends of the spectrum. And I really enjoy these kids. I really do, right? Because they just have such like an innocence about them and an honesty about them and just a genuineness in whatever it is, you know, just whatever it is. Some things have been difficult, but you know, nonetheless, it's just really been interesting to see that even though, you know, we might not be able to communicate the same way, there's certain things that are universal, right? God is universal. Okay, God is universal. It doesn't matter the language, it doesn't matter the translation. You know, God is just universal. God's love is universal. The Holy Spirit is universal. Earlier I made mention of people who are not, you know, who don't, excuse me, who speak in tongues, but they, you know, play around in it. I don't like playing around it. If you ever really hear somebody speak in tongues, and it's just like to hear the language, you know, that spiritual language, and not have an idea without an interpreter of what's being said. And I don't know if anybody's ever received that gift, but it's just amazing because you know that is not of you, you know, and it's just like a heavenly language. And it's I cannot explain it, you know, I just cannot explain it. But just to know that we really don't have, like, we get so hung up on the limits of our words and our looks, and I want to put God in this box and I want to put God in that box, and not understanding that, you know, these are all worldly things. God is above and beyond all of that, right? All of that. So it's no way for it to be my way is right, your way is wrong, where I'm from is what it is, and where you're from is what it's not. It's just so beyond all of that. And we get so hung up on these little things that really, in the eyes of the Lord, don't matter, because He's looking at it like, but you're all my children. You're all my children. You're all my creation. You know, all mine. If you would just just look above all of this, you know, I mean, truly look above all of this, we wouldn't even have time to be focused on any of the things that we see. You know, if we just look to the heavens, you know, look to the hills, you know, which cometh our help, you know, knowing that our help coming from the Lord. Like, we couldn't be focused on all of these things, but we are so distracted by these things that don't mean anything. So Fanta, you had something to say earlier? I don't know if we said it or.
Yeah, I had something to say. It was just what I've come to learn is the more I grow with the Lord, the more I grow spiritually, that I started praying to ask God to help me see each children as He's seeing them. Because before I was like trying to handle things even with my sisters. I've been testifying with my sisters, but now I am able to know my responsibility with my God. You know, I cannot be behaving with everybody like I was behaving before. Being a child in the Lord is different than growing up in the Lord. The more you grow spiritually, the more responsibility you have, not towards people, but towards the God you serve, the God that you said is your Lord. You know, that's why what Amber was saying is so relevant, because we cannot behave like everybody else, because you don't know that the person in front of you, what is his level of spiritual growth. You cannot put yourself down to his level. You have to help people to go up to your level, because you know that everybody that is on this earth, Jesus died for them. He loved them, every one of us, so dearly that he was able to give his life for that person that is in front of you. And also, Valencia said it right. We are not fighting flesh and blood. You know, we have the spiritual battle. It's the spirit behind the people in front of you that you have, you are fighting, not the child of God that is in front of you. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right. This was a good conversation. Anybody have anything else that they wanted to add? Nobody? All right. All right. Well, I could tell you one thing. I don't know about you, but you know, excuse me, I spend a good amount of time going through, you know, I listen a lot and I'll be listening to the Bible, so I try to get the pronunciations of these names. That don't work out too well, right? but I listen a lot. We read, you know, we study, and it's just amazing how, you know, it really is just amazing how we to get something different each and every time, you know. I thank God for everybody's input. I thank God today for even Amber's, excuse me, and Valencia's interpretation of the word, because, you know, it gives us such a different perspective, you know. Never once in preparing for the study did I think that this was where it was going to go. This is one of the reasons why this is one of the reasons why I like the fact that the Lord started leading us this way, to where we'll read the passage, open it up, and just see what everyone has to say, and allow the Holy Spirit to take control, which is something I feel that has been happening ever since, you know, we started. But I love it because God has a way of showing us what it is that we need to learn. And so even if it's something different tomorrow, or, you know, adding on to what it is that we learned today, I just thank God, because any and everything that we need is in His word, and He shows us that repeatedly. He shows us that each and every week there's something to learn, something new, and it's, once again, it's the living word. I say that all the time. This is the living word. This is the living, breathing word. Okay, this is God manifested on paper. In the beginning was the word. Okay, and I just thank God for it, because we see just how real He is. And so when we find ourselves in certain situations and we feel like, you know, well, you know, God is not real, or, you know, this didn't happen back then, and, you know, it's just a history book. It's like, no, if you really get into it and you really study and you know that word, anything that you're going through today is in that word, knowing what it is, how God wants you to handle. I remember when we were going through Leviticus, one of the ladies from the Bible study has told me repeatedly how much she enjoyed the book of Leviticus, because she felt like God covered everything. God covered absolutely everything. In the book of Leviticus, He left no stone unturned when it came to letting us know what it was, you know, what it was that he expected of us. And we're still seeing that. Okay. We haven't even made it to the New Testament yet. We're still in the Old Testament in this study, and we are still seeing it. And so when people tell you to have faith, when people tell you that God is a healer, when we tell you that, God could do anything, that he could bring you out of your situation no matter what it is, he absolutely can. And he knows all about it. Why do he know about what we going through? When we sit here and we look and we be like, we killing each other, they killing us, we got this going on. Well, where is God? Right here, because it's been happening. He showed you. He showed you, but he also showed you what he had for them. He always had a place for them. There's always been a promised land. It has, and while you're waiting for it, I know I'm going to get there one day, I am. It doesn't matter what continent I'm from. It might not be here on this earth, but I know that there's a place for me. And I am trying to show God and earn my way there. I know that, even my righteousness is as filthy rags, but I could tell you one thing, and this is coming from somebody who was diagnosably afraid of death and dying. Okay. It was an anxiety that I dealt with for years, but the closer that I get to the Lord, I'm less afraid because I just trust him. The same way I go in and I know that he called and created the people of Israel and what he had for them, I trust him. And so I'm less afraid of what he has than the time that I have here. I'm loving about getting to learn about the person that I'm going to spend eternity with. I am so serious. The little bit of awesomeness that I see in his word, I promise you, it makes me less afraid. I'm less concerned and less sad even when I've lost people. I really am. I'm less sad. I mean, I miss them. I'm not able to call. I'm not able to do certain things. Yes, I miss that. But I am less sad, far less sad than ever. And especially when it's a person that I could trust, that they knew the Lord, that they believed and accepted Jesus Christ. I just trust. I really do. I trust. If I could read this word and trust what God was saying and wanted for the people of Israel, how can I not believe that for my life? How could I not? And so, I just continue to encourage you to be in relationship with the Lord. If you really don't know him personally, I think that was touched on earlier. The closer that you get, I think Fanta was saying it, like it was one thing to be raised up, knowing God, but it's something else to really, be with him, to get to know him, to grow in him, know him for yourself. I mean, I just encourage you. I encourage you through prayer. I encourage you through conversation. I encourage you through worship, praise, whatever it looks like for you, whatever is between you and God. There's no set stone. I think next week will be the first Wednesday. So we're going to do communion again. I'm not going to show the video. I know some people were like devastated when I showed that video. I understand, but if it's painful for you to watch, imagine how painful it was for Christ to go through it. I'm just going to leave that there. But, just remembering him. I want us to remember him. I want us to just be in communion and community with him. I really do. I want us to have faith in him when things are not looking right, not looking hopeful, when we're getting tired, knowing what it is to truly turn something over, to him. I'm not saying that is easy. Trust me, I struggle. I do. I struggle. But I thank God for the Bible study, if nothing else, because it makes me get in my word and it gives me hope and it makes me not struggle as long as I used to struggle before, because I would struggle for a long time with a lot of things and I just don't struggle like that anymore. I have peace. If I have nothing else, I have that peace that surpasses all understanding. So I just want to encourage you. I cannot get on before 6 for the next couple of weeks, so we will not be having prayer right before 6, but we're going to pray before we get off. All right. We're gonna pray and just pray on your own. Talk to God wherever it is. Just do what you gotta do. All right. Any last questions or concerns or comments? If you was too shy to add anything and you really want to say something and you've been playing double dutch with the, mute, unmute button, put it in the chat, chat somebody privately who will say it. Tell Valencia, she'll say it. Y'all could direct message Valencia or Amber and they'll say it, or they'll say it. You could just direct message them and, they ain't got to say who said it, but you could say, well, in the chat, somebody said this, I thank God for their boldness and their being comfortable. And even if you're somebody who come and don't say anything, I'm cool with that. The fact that you come is awesome. The fact that you show up is awesome. One thing I could brag on, we might not have a church, but people who have churches, only a small percentage of their members come to Bible study. With this ministry, all my members come to Bible study. So that was real corny, but I liked it. But anyway, all my members come to Bible study. So I thank God for that. But if
Nicole,
there's
I have a question.
yes,
And I was struggling whether to ask it or not, and we kind of touched on it today.
okay.
So I actually had a situation today with a coworker who's going through some things, and she was just like, one of the comments she made and kind of describing everything to me was like, I don't know where God is in this, but I'm, and you want to respond with that, like, well, he's always in it, but I didn't, because I could tell she was really upset. And I knew, like you said earlier, nothing I could have said to her would have helped that. But and sometimes, like we said, as we grow in our spirituality, we do kind of like, we want to defend God. We want to say like, girl, he in there somewhere. What do you really do? Or is it even our place sometimes to even do anything, even as much as we want to? Like I said, in that moment, I just wished her well. And I was just like, well, I'm happy that, you're okay. But what do you say? Like, how do you deal with that situation?
Well, I'll be 100% honest with you. Sometimes it's not anything that you could say, or the things that we think that we should say is not necessarily the appropriate things. You learned that kind of in when we did grief. Sometimes it could be sharing. A lot of times I might share stuff with people that I've gone through and felt the same way. And in an indirect way, people get hope from seeing God work through another situation. Sometimes, Amber, just sitting with somebody and hearing them, you're reflecting God in that way by being present, because that person could be feeling lonely. Sometimes you could just ask somebody, like, how do you want to see God show up? What would it look like? And just engage them in conversation, because a lot of us, when we think that God showing up is God doing exactly what we want, when we want it, and how we want it.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the way God operates. We see that through the word. Other people might not. But sometimes hearing it, and I have had conversations with people where, it's like, well, God is not doing this. And I'm like, you're expecting them to do it? Or I shouldn't be going through this. Well, the world is going through it. You're not, and just, and whatever just engaging, because it makes people think. You could, if you want to say something, one thing that I've heard, I'm not telling you to say anything corny like this, but someone said, the teacher is always quiet during a test. The teacher is always quiet during a test. You never see the teacher there just giving answers. The teacher is always quiet during a test. And that's just one of those things, but it can just be, if nothing else, just an opportunity to just see what do people believe of God, because that's more of what you're responding to more than anything. Some people have really been taught that God is like this magical figure. And if we pray to him, then boom, then your wishes should be coming true. But I hate to say it, they've been taught wrong, because if you're really in the word, like we have been, we'll see that that's just not the way that it is. We see that there are some long processes, right? We see that God might not show up in the way we want him to. That might not be something that you could tell somebody who's going through something and they want a response right there, but it could just be an opportunity for you to just start understanding where they are with it and then offer something to them, and offer prayer. A lot of times when I pray to people, I don't pray for people, excuse me, I can't always pray for what they want me to pray for. I don't know what to pray for. I pray that God's will be done. I pray that we have peace in the process. I will pray and acknowledge that we want very specific things to be done. Okay. We want very specific things to be done. We want God to heal us. We want to walk again. We want to be healed from this particular ailment, and we can pray for it. But in the process, let's be praying for peace. In the process, I'm going to pray for peace. Until you see God show up in the way that you want him to see, I pray that he can give you a peace that surpasses all understanding. And then that might, oh, well, what is that?
Right. See, it's so much in like that. I just didn't know. I think somebody from iPhone said they wanted to respond to any responses, because I'm sure this may happen again, and I didn't know what to offer, so I just offered well wishes. But I don't know.
And through your experiences, because even what you're saying, well, what is that? One of the reasons why I know what the peace that surpasses all understanding is because when God gave it to me, I knew what it was.
Mm-hmm.
I did. I knew what that was. And you give what you could give. I prayed for that for people, because when my grandfather died and I was in that room with him and on the bed with him, and I loved my grandfather. My grandfather was my friend. Like, he was my favorite person in my family to talk to. Like, I really loved him. I really did. But when I walked out of that hospital, I was okay. And that was just a piece. I didn't understand why I was okay, but I was okay. And that was truly, when you think about the words, it's peace that surpasses all understanding. Okay, I don't understand why this had to happen. I don't understand why I got a phone call at work, had to hurry up and get on a bus, why I had to lose. I don't understand that. But I had a peace that superseded all of that. God did that. It's my experience. I don't know about a whole lot of things, but I know about those things that I know about, and those are the things that I can share. And because I know it, those are the things that I'm able to pray for. Some things might be different. You know where God has taken you from, Amber. You use your experience. You share that with people. Your testimony is your testimony, and the people that God sends to you, you're going to be able to help them with your testimony, whatever it is. You might have never seen God in the flesh like she might want to see him in the flesh, but you know that God is real, and you tell her why you know that God is real and how he's been present in your life. And if nothing else, it just plants a seed. We're not there to plant, water, nurture it, watch it grow. This is not a chia pet. You might not be there to show her exactly who God is in her situation, but if God brought her to you, you pray to God real quick. God, what do you want me to say? And sometimes the things that we say might make no sense to us, but I bet you it will be just what she needs. If God brought you to her, have the faith that whatever you are capable of giving to her is going to be enough. The rest of it is going to be up to God. And trust me, that's where your faith got to come in. Don't look to tell people that you're going to give them something that you can't guarantee. You are not a fortune teller. And unless you're operating in the prophetic, in that way to where you can tell people what's to come, you give them what you got. And I bet you that it'll be sufficient. I bet you that God will show up. So one day that person will even come back to you and say, Amber, when you said this and it really made me think, or it, just sparked a change in my life. And you're like, I don't even remember saying that. But just trust it. Just trust it. We do not, and that's something I want to say, we do not, okay, Tyler, but we do not have to feel like we gotta pull on the full, armor and representation of God like that. That if that's God is gonna do what God is gonna do, trust me. God is gonna show up in her life. He is. She's telling you now she's planting the seed. He's planting the seed. Just
Gotcha.
trust that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And if nothing else, girl, you was getting your hair done when you started coming. So I mean, you know what I'm trying to say, like,
Yeah.
you know, you was getting your hair done. So, all right. Somebody on an iPhone said that they wanted to say something. I don't know who that is.
It's me.
Who's me?
It's Crystal.
Hi, Crystal.
Hi. I just wanted to respond, go off of what she was saying.
Yeah.
So it's two things I wanted to say. The first thing I was gonna say is that, you can always, what you said, going off of what you said, is always encourage people and stuff like that. But something else too is that God never leaves our side. And to offer what the last person she mentioned was, like she was going through a tough time, so she didn't know what to say to her at the moment. And going off of what you said, like, we're not here to make people believe, like, we're just here to like plant the seed. Something else just to say really quickly as well too is that you may be going through something and don't see what God really has in store for you at the moment. You may think it might be like your lowest and, that you can't go any lower. But I just wanted to say that, like I said before, God never leaves your side. So don't ever think that just because you're going through a tough time, like, you're not one of God's children, or you shouldn't believe in God. Because, I went through an experience where I grew up in a church and I went through really rough times, and I just felt like, oh, I'm going to take a step back from the church, not saying I don't believe in God, but looking at where I am now and to what I've been through, like I said, they won't see it at that moment, but just letting people know that God still cares about you. God hears you, and, he did not forget about you. I think that goes a long way as well. And something else too, I wanted to say, this is my second time on Bible study, and I am new to the area. I'm not gonna like put her out there because I don't know if she want me to, mention her name. But I moved here and I was going through a really tough time. And it's funny because I just told you I grew up in a church and I reached to a point where I stopped going to church completely. So someone actually referred me to this Bible study when I want to say like maybe that was my lowest, and that was my first Bible study with you guys, but it really helped. I honestly, I don't know you personally. I did tell her, thank you for inviting me. I don't come on here every Wednesday, but I do try. I feel like if you try, that still, counts. But like I said, she gave me words of encouragement. And it's funny because every time I would go to her and say, oh, like explain to her what, her name is Katrina too, by the way. Every time I would go to her and tell her what I'm going through, it's funny because she will always say like, oh, I'm going to say a prayer for you or pray about it. Like, did you go to God about it? So, just having people around you to remind you that, no, he did not forget. Like I said, I really think that does help a lot. And even if they don't believe in God right away, we're going off for what you said, eventually down the line, they're going to look back and be like, oh, wow, this person did say, or, like she did say, like, that I should still have faith, or, that there is a God. It might take some time, but Rome wasn't built overnight as well. So, but that's all.
Amen.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Sharon. Sorry, go ahead, Amber. I cut you off.
No, I was just saying thank you because I appreciated the reply.
No problem.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for whoever invited you. Whether they want to say it or not, I appreciate it.
It was Katrina.
It was Katrina. Okay, good. Look, Moses over there catching it. All right. Thank you. Look, Katrina I really love you, Katrina, because she be pulling them in, pulling them in, pulling them in.
I love you too.
But thank you, and I really appreciate it. And you're right. You know, we and it's always good to say God never leaves, because that is the word. You know, that God never leaves us nor forsake us. You know, and so thank you so much, Crystal. I hope that you come back. And I don't want to put you out there, but if you could leave your name, your number to direct any of us, or I will give you mine just in case you ever want to connect. Don't be a stranger. Don't feel like a stranger, even if it's weeks or however long before you come in. And so we appreciate you. I wouldn't have known that you were there without, you saying something today. So that definitely put a smile on my face. No, Valencia. Valencia.
And look at me co-signing, ain't no good with the little smiley face. Let me erase that real quick. I ain't no.
Exactly. Don't fall into Valencia's foolishness.
Valencia about to get in trouble.
Not with my Moses. Everybody know that that's my baby in the group right there. So,
No, we love Moses. He know we mess with him.
yeah, and Moses is, he's the voice of the people. Okay, that's what Moses is.
Right, like she was confused. I wasn't trying to snitch. I knew I had the right to say it because like I seen they typed in the chat. Someone said Katrina, so I was like, okay, now I can say it.
Okay. See, thank you. He got my back. Okay, he got my back. He said I was confused. He had my back. Thank you. But but thank you, Valencia. You made us laugh at the end. But once again, thank you, Crystal. Like I said, if you want to connect, that's completely fine. Whatever makes you comfortable. But I definitely appreciate the fact that you came back. All right. So with all of that said, I am sorry, 7:20. I'm gonna go ahead and pray us out. Remember, next week is our communion. If you have your elements, you have them. If you don't, you don't. Don't let that stop you from coming. All right. Let me pray, and y'all pray for me too, because I have just been not feeling well at all, but I'm gonna push through anyway because God is always present, and I know that God is a healer. So with that said, I'm gonna pray. Even while I feel like this. So if all minds and hearts